Saints to make it 28-3. Arthur Blank loving it. Up by 25. Toss to White. He's in! What a comeback!
All right, welcome back to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. Been a little sabbatical for us.
Yeah, it's been a while. How do we do this thing again?
Yeah, I know. Huh? Well, first, you make sure that it's plugged in.
Yeah, first you make sure it's plugged in. If you can't hear yourself on the audio, just for any other fellow podcasters out there, first step, we're plugged in. We can hear ourselves.
Pro tip, right?
Hopefully you listeners can hear us as well.
There we go. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about the Alvin Kamara situation, contract request, his little mini holdout that he has going on. But I think before we can talk about some minicamp rumblings, I guess practice observations that we've heard.
Yeah, so since our last recording, the Saints have completed their final OTA sessions even, and then went on to their minicamp. It's my favorite topic of OTAs and minicamp, man. Those QBs look great every year, and this apparently was no exception.
So give me Carr's stat line right now. What do you have?
I think he was
8 for 8 last year.
He was like 1,000 for 1,000. He didn't miss a single touchdown pass, especially when there was no one guarding the receivers.
I have a feeling your feeling is a little different this year.
Yeah, absolutely. After going through what we did, because look, last year we had no experience of seeing Derek Carr on the field in a Saints uniform, much less the, disaster that it became seeing him on the field in Saints uniform with Pete Carmichael as his offensive coordinator, with an offensive line that was banged up, with trying to make Penning make that work in the first couple games. So, okay, so do we have a completely different scenario around him? Does he have a new OC? Yes. Are there a couple of other guys on the O-line that, might do well under that new system? Sure. But, again, I think, if anything, last year's optimism and hype, and then what happened in the season after that, has absolutely tempered, how I feel when I hear RB reporters say, what they're saying, what they're seeing, etc. So,
yep. I don't know. My thoughts. We talked about preseason last time and this time. It's useless, pretty much.
Well, not even so much preseason, more OTAs is useless.
I know. The whole thing. OTAs is completely useless. We all get all amped up about somebody who came in and looked good. And so we'll see. I don't think Carr's changed as a player. I have a higher opinion of him than you guys, not by leaps and bounds, but a little bit. Do I think we've transformed the team or anything that's happened since last season makes me think he can perform better than last year? Not really. I think offensive line is an even bigger question mark, and all three of us called it a question mark before last season. So as far as Carr looking great, and I know there were moments for Radler and Hainer, and all that's fun, but the truth is we're in my opinion in a worse situation than we were last year at this time. Now that could change. We have young guys, we have new coaching on offense especially. Do I think Carr could probably get the job done if everything's dialed in? Yeah, I do. If it looks like last year, he won't get the job done, and it'll look very similar probably to last season. Other than, the last 5-6 weeks where we saw them get it together way too late and start to look like what we thought they could look like. And that was even without Michael Thomas, who's now gone as well. So barring that offensive line, I think that's the only thing we should be looking at all preseason. Are the signs coming that the new system is making these guys more effective? And with Fuaga and, the other free agent additions, did we get better? Yeah. Because if we didn't, then, I think we're looking at a similar season.
Yeah, it's funny because the team as a whole, honestly, it looks similar to last year. Obviously there's a new offense in play, but the reality is
personnel-wise?
The personnel,
not much different.
Not much different. We really didn't make any big additions or big subtractions. it's going to be very much wait and see. Like Nick said, the offensive line last year, we talked about it. We touched on it before the season, saying this is the foundation. This is the pivot point. If it goes bad, which it did, the season's going to be bad on offense.
Yeah.
So we were all spot on that. This year, I'm intrigued by Fuaga at left tackle because it does make sense to try him out there. If he proves he can't do it, then move him to right tackle next year and go get a left tackle in the first round.
Yeah.
But for this year, I do like him at the left tackle spot. He, by all accounts, should be the most effective offensive lineman other than McCoy.
Yeah.
From what we're looking at. Saldiveri looks like he's penciled in for the left guard spot. Obviously McCoy in the center, Ruiz at right guard, and they've got Penning, I think, getting every chance at making the starting position at right tackle. So
yeah.
I don't know. Penning still scares me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, at least they're trying something different and giving him a clean slate. But, man, it's going to be, like Nick said, we're going to be watching the offensive line under a microscope the entire preseason.
And you have to. And what you were saying about Fuaga, I think, the things we've been hearing out of camp, especially that Penning is lined up at right tackle. The first time we heard of Fuaga at left tackle was the rookie minicamp, and they were trying to couch it by saying, oh, it's rookie minicamp. And then DA kind of didn't hide the 8 ball later and was like, no, we're putting my left tackle. And I think that's a
you kind of have to,
and you have to,
because Penning, you can't slate
right,
him at left tackle.
Exactly. You can't. We've seen, doesn't matter who the coach is, Penning, that player cannot play left tackle. And so Fuaga at left tackle kind of goes hand in hand with their idea of lining up Penning at right tackle because, it's pretty obvious, seems evident that Ramczyk is not, you can't count on him even being on the field. So
I don't think he ever plays another snap.
If you're not putting Penning at right tackle, and I say this, you almost have to, put last year out of your mind as hard as that could be, but clearly they saw him because of where they drafted him as somebody who could be a starter in this league. And so right tackle is his last chance to do that. And so that means effectively, if he can be a starter in this league, Penning is the only person who has, reliable starter, quote unquote, potential at that position. Otherwise, you're putting the fill-in guys that you've signed in free agency at that position. So Fuaga at left goes hand in hand with Penning being successful at right. Because if you got to put somebody else at right tackle anyway, why not just put somebody else at left, put Fuaga where he's natural on the right side?
I'm just curious, especially with the new system, why did we not go target someone at tight end? And you could use that at that side,
well,
if he's, if we're going to have to help him all the time.
What kind of tight end are you talking about targeting?
Blocking tight end. Someone that's
like a Billy Miller type?
No, he's saying somebody in the middle rounds, I think. Someone who's like a Darnell Washington type.
Yeah. Perfect example.
Okay.
Actually.
He's basically another tackle.
Yeah.
Right. And if he can help you in the pass game, great. You'd love, but even if you didn't get that, just if we're going to have to, we're all thinking this is going to be a more run-focused offense, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kubiak said it will be. He wants to run against Amy on front.
Why did we not bring in one of these, tight ends that could support Penning over there? You're going to need blocking tight ends in this scheme.
And you're obviously talking about like a legit, possibly playing tight end, not a camp body. Because I think we signed some guy off the street.
Someone that has to be a starter.
Yeah.
But and I don't know what was out there. I didn't look at it. So I'm kind of talking out of my ass a little. But
you never do that.
If there was, this is not an expensive player in my mind. Sort of a one-dimensional. There aren't, I'm not talking to George Kittle who can do everything on the field or Gronk. That's not what I mean. I just mean someone who could help in a 6-man block situation.
Because even San Fran, if we're trying to transpose what San Fran did to a large degree to us, they had Fred Warner, who was not very widely known across the league. I kind of only really know who he is because he played at Georgia, but he was very well respected for his blocking ability. Not a huge guy.
Fred Warner. He went to
that's
BYU, bro. That's
you talking about linebacker?
Not Fred Warner. Charlie. I think it's Charlie Warner.
Okay.
Charlie Warner. Fred's
all-pro linebacker, right?
But Charlie Warner. Yeah. Whatever. Last name Warner. Played tight end for the Niners.
Cut him some slack. We're working off some of the rust.
Yeah. I kind of do this even on a regular basis. But,
yeah, we know.
but he's not the biggest guy, but he's just very, very polished, very high football IQ blocker. So, look, we know everyone in the building respects the hell out of Foster Moreau. Do they think he's that guy? Maybe.
Foster can block.
He can block. He can block.
So
he's the only one of the tight ends that can block.
Right. I was about to say, if you look at our lineup now, I mean, I
wouldn't say he's elite, but he can block.
Everyone's talking about Dalen Holker. And
he's not a blocker.
Not a
right.
blocker.
And I think a lot of people are like, oh, that guy's great. It's like, and I might be guilty of this, but it's like, what play of his did you see besides that thing he did at the combine? And that alone is great. But I mean, yeah, it just goes to show the sparseness of that tight end room, especially with the news of your boy Max Juwan Johnson. So no, I agree with that.
And maybe we're running, maybe we're bringing the old original Peyton Zach Strief situation back, and we're running that extra tackle. It's an actual tackle.
Well, look, I respect the hell out of Kubiak's apparent penchant for fullbacks. Taysom lining up there and pretty much everywhere. Hopefully, we said it on previous pods where, look, love the idea of Taysom being that true Swiss Army knife, like playing every offensive skill position besides quarterback. But can he hold up? If you're putting him up to dot the I formation, is he really going to hold up?
Of all Carmichael's faults last year, which there were many, the biggest one to me was not helping Penning when he was getting killed. We just repeatedly just left him there, and in those early games, and just watched him as a turnstile. So I think if that approach, and we just give him help, if you're going to chip that end every time in the pass game, do something. And that can all be done with the motion and everything. Make however you want to do it. Fullbacks, Taysom, even if it's a receiver, but we don't have anyone who really would excel at that role. But someone who can help out on that side just to slow it down for Penning, I think that's going to be necessary.
And here,
I would love for them to call the Steelers up and see how much they want for Darnell Washington.
I would love that.
I mean, we all would. We all loved him coming out.
We didn't get our other Georgia tight end, so maybe we can get Darnell.
I mean, this one. Look, Darnell's not getting used in Pittsburgh because they've got what's our guy Fryermuth, who's fantastic, and he's not going to see the field.
They even got They got
another tight end too.
I feel like Pittsburgh is a bastion for tight ends that
what's the other receiver? The guy who
never heard of that come out of the woodwork.
Was a good tight end a year or two before Fryermuth broke out. They still have him. What's his name? I think
it's one of them with like an old cowboy name. Can't think of it.
I'm drawing a blank. God damn.
Either way, though, maybe he's available because he wasn't a high pick last year. He was like a third or a fourth.
I think, and the reason we're even on this one singular granular topic of tight end and is our personnel cut out for it is because everything this year, unlike last year, hinges around this new offensive system. And so I think, the things that we really need to know, we won't be able to figure out. And I would say we won't be able to figure out until training camp or preseason. But even then, what do you really figure out about a team at that juncture? Because usually people say, oh, we'll know more when the pads come on. And you do know more by definition of the word more. But do you really know what you have? The fans aren't going to be satisfied no matter what until we start winning games. But I think success on the offense, if we want to see return on investment for new guy comes in Kubiak, new slate of coaches, these guys that are grizzled, have experience, youthful guy at the wide receiver position coach, that all hinges 100% on how the guys we have in the room, especially the starters from last year, take to Kubiak's system. If they get it, and if they can execute it, fantastic. Because then I think we at least have a fighter's chance at minimum. But if they don't, then we're going to be like.
I just don't like the tight end position group as a whole. I think it's the weakest position group on the team right now. You don't have any all-purpose, strong at everything guy on the team.
Yeah,
it's like Foster's solid.
Right.
He's just solid at everything. He's a solid blocker. He's a solid receiver. He's not great at either. Juwan Johnson can't block, and half the time he can't catch.
And he's hurt.
And he's hurt. So Holker looks like he's going to be the type that can catch, but he's not big, man. He's like 6'3", maybe 240.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a big guy.
He's early Jimmy Graham this year is how he might be used.
Yeah.
He'll come in on third down and stuff like that occasionally, but he's not going to start or play significantly, you wouldn't think. And Foster, potentially could be the starter, depending on how this goes with Juwan.
He's going to have to be at this point.
Yeah. So
that position group scares me.
And it's the
he's
ultimate.
not a starter.
To me,
he shouldn't be. No.
It's the ultimate position that, when you say there's a position that won't by itself lose you the game, but it can win you the game. Having an X factor at tight end can absolutely win you football games. Having someone who sucks at tight end, is that alone going to help? Is that going to cause you to lose a game? Probably not. Not like a left tackle, not like a quarterback.
Yeah, and we covered this all leading up to the draft. Like elite tight ends
Yeah.
changed offenses.
Yeah.
Like
So-
Kelsey, Kittle.
And regardless of who we picked up or would have picked up, we know that we weren't going to have an elite tight end unless we had happened to draft Brock Bowers. But then we would be having this same conversation about the offensive tackle spot.
Yeah. We're slumming it at tight end. We knew that going into once the draft ended, we knew we were slumming it.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're all excited and the fan base is excited about Dallin Holker, who nobody in this fucking room knew who he was 3 months ago, says something about the tight end room.
And for whatever reason, I agree with Corey in that it can't cost you games. But let's look at the last 4 teams that were left last year. They all have elite tight ends.
Exactly.
It's become a big part of what offenses used to open up the field, and all of those offenses excelled with elite tight ends. So is that
2011 Saints.
Yeah. Is that partially the rules and what's going on with NFL offenses? I don't know. Maybe the outside yards are getting more difficult.
Well, I think it's your smart offensive coordinators, creating mismatches and exposing the middle of the field. That was one of the gripes with Carmichael last year. Like, we barely threw it over the middle. Now, did we maybe not have the personnel to do it? We had Juwan, but...
We had Michael Thomas for a few games. It didn't seem like we were using him a lot in that, to be fair. Juwan was terrible the first half of the season.
Yeah.
The last few games, he came around a little bit, and we started opening up the middle of the field, and that's partially why Also, you need time for those bigger guys to get downfield if you're going to push it down the field in the middle, and we just didn't have that the first half of the season. So that's a big part of it, too.
Well, we got to cover who actually did well in the mini camps. So I know Dallin Holker, we've talked about him plenty already, and we got to give him a shout out because by all accounts he's been fantastic in the OTAs and the mini camps.
Yeah.
Who else? I'm trying to think who else they talked about. Oh, one thing that scares me, we haven't talked about the running backs yet, but apparently Kendre Miller's running third.
Yeah, behind
after Jamal Williams and Kamara. That's not at all ideal right now.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I think that could change a lot between now and the season. But then there's also the factor of, like, all right, it is the NFL. There is some, sense of giving the nod to the guys that have been there longer, have more experience.
That shouldn't be the case in year 2. In year 2, and it's a new offense. It's a new offense as well, where they're both in the offense at the same time.
That could
just
as well be.
But
they're trying to motivate him so they can cut Jamal. It could just as well be that.
Or they're trying to motivate him so they can trade Kamara. Because think about it, Kamara, and we're going to get to that, but his contract next year, he is not going to be on the team under that contract.
Nor should he.
Nor should he, honestly.
Let's just be honest about where he is.
The contract for next year,
Correct.
So
we're committed this year, unfortunately, with the money. But he shouldn't be at that price tag.
Yeah.
He is in every other circle, in every other team that isn't a bottom 5 team, he's not going to be their starting running back. He's going to be a niche used running back. He's not going to be a 200 carry guy. He's not.
And then in general, there's that whole idea barely even exists league wide. The whole idea of a RB1 isn't really a thing league wide anymore.
Look at Dalvin Cook.
Are there teams with a full-fledged running back 1? Yes, but overall, even I think some of the most successful teams don't have. San Francisco was an example of having a first-string running back, but then
there's a few.
You look at the
Derrick
Chiefs
Henry.
and Pacheco's in there, but you wouldn't really
Taylor.
You wouldn't really right, but there's a few. There's not really that many.
Saquon. I think there's
there's more than you think. Most teams, not most. There's a good portion of teams still have
Nick
a number
Chubb
1.
was a clear one.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker was until he got hurt.
Yeah, I think you're understating that. There's at least half of the teams in the league have a
Rashad White,
solid.
Bijan it's a split, but Bijan got 280 touches. So
It's not.
Your boy from the Rams too. I can't
like
remember his
they were
damn
kinda
name. He
split.
was really good this year.
he was definitely one.
Yeah, there's plenty of ones in the league.
It's not the same as it's not like the one work. Not every team has a.
There's
one
not a lot of
workhorse.
Derrick Henrys anymore. That's true.
Right, that died in the early 90s.
Right.
though.
So I'm saying
But this isn't new over the last 5 or 6 years. It's the same business as usual where...
But my Kamara, look at what happened to Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook coming off a much better year than Kamara's had the last 3 years. He ended up a backup behind a young running back and a definitive backup, like a 1/5. Like maybe he got 20% of the offensive plays. Breece Hall was getting the whole thing, as he should.
Yeah.
So that's where I think his role is. The problem for us is we've committed to this. What is it? What's the hit this year? 13 million. 15?
This year isn't the
11.
problem. It's because it's
11?
guaranteed.
Yeah.
Next year is $22 million guaranteed. No, it's not guaranteed. I'm sorry. It's a
25.
$22 million.
None of it's guaranteed.
None of it's
That's
guaranteed.
his issue.
So he is.
And that's why he's making this play, which I get because he knows. But if he goes in the open market, what I was asking y'all before we got on is, what do you think he gets? No one's giving him even $5 million a year on the open market.
And
in
I
my
think,
opinion.
and we're on the topic now. I was going to say if there's any
let's go ahead and
any
get
other
into
mini
it.
camp stuff, but I think they're really
This is the big one.
Nothing earth
This is the
shattering.
big topic, yeah.
But that's why he's in a position to do it because
Is
He's not. He's trying to force it.
we've established what's his avenue of earning the most. I think the place where he has the
staying with
potential
the
to
Saints.
earn the most is the Saints.
Yeah.
Does he want to only play for the Saints for one more year? No. He's made it known he wants to extend his time with this team. I think that also goes to his value, though, because let's just say he plays this year, we just flat out release him before next year, take the dead money hit, then he's right back into the same boat of like, all right, who's going to sign me and for what? It's probably not going to be much for that great of a role. So his play right now is to say, this team, my team, with the history of restructuring and extending guys and doing void years and all that shit, like, let's put the ball in their court, tell them how serious I am by walking out of a minicamp. And to me, if I'm AK, this is my best chance of getting the most earnings over the course of the next 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And it just
I'm saying that's
is what it
laughable
is.
because it's just not realizing where he's at in his career today.
If he wants to earn more over the next 2 to 3 years, earn more than the 11 mil he's getting this year plus, what would be a 3 or 4 mil contract by another team.
Give me a scenario. Like, what do you think? If you're in AK's camp, what are you really asking for? An extra year and what? Or an extra 2 years and what?
He's more than likely asking for an extra 2 years. He probably wants to be making. I mean, they have to know the 25 for next year is way unrealistic.
So
Everyone
what's the number?
knows that. He's not playing into that number.
Like, we know if you make $6 million, you're in the top 10 in the league. AK is nowhere even close to sniffing top 10 in the league anymore. So
As a player.
As a player.
Yeah. As a contract, under a contract, he absolutely is getting that.
He's number 2.
Yeah,
He's the
it's just
second highest paid
ridiculous.
running back in the league still on this contract that was signed 4 years ago.
Yeah.
He's still the second highest paid running back in the league behind McCaffrey.
And not only that, he's going to be 29 for the regular season.
And 30 next year.
30 next year.
I think for him and any running back, and it kind of goes back to the whole
Well, he's got to try.
running back issue. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He has to try. Like
Well, let me ask you this. Would you pay him? Where do you
I would-
stand on it?
So I actually had this conversation with
We paid
the
him already.
two.
No, I know. But
Well,
the reason I ask is
of
I have a
course you
feeling
did,
his
but-
opinion is going to be different than ours.
It's. I'll describe this best as it was put in a text message between my brother and my friend Eric, who you all both know. Player A in that text said, "I don't want us to cave," and then I responded with, "I'm okay if we cave a little," because the conversation started with, "I really hope we don't cave and pay AK." I'm like, "I'm okay with like 30% cave," and then Eric was like, "I want 0 cave." And
I'm with Eric.
So tell me, okay, the cave you're acceptable. So we know he's got a cap hit of roughly 11, right? That's what we're saying. Next year, we know next year doesn't happen, no matter
Right.
what. There's no way it happens.
We shouldn't pay him as the highest paid running back in the league
What do you say the
beyond,
restructure looks like is what I'm asking you. So let's take into account he can sit right as he is and make his $11 million this year, right?
Yeah.
He has nothing going forward because it's an absolute cut at $22 million. We know that never happens.
And his $11 million has not been converted to a bonus yet, so it's still salary. I'd say convert that to bonus.
Why? Then you're
extending
adding
it.
more down the road. Everything
They won't.
they've done this offseason points to them not trying to get away from that as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that world where the Saints just kick the can down the road on every single available contract, that doesn't exist right now. And it doesn't look like it's going to exist over the next couple of seasons as they, under Mickey Loomis's quote, are trying to get the cap in order.
Yeah. So real quick, we know he gets his 11 this year as salary, right? And we're committed. There's no way we're getting out of $11 million. You say he wants 2 more years. So we can lump in this year and restructure.
Yep.
3 years, how much money for you? He's already getting 11 for 1 year. 3 years, how much money? So how much more money?
What are you willing to pay him
The
per
easiest
year?
thing that's coming to my mind is giving him, take what he's getting this year.
No, just give us numbers.
Bring it down to 10 and put that over the next 2 years. So give him 5.
So you're
per
saying
year.
2 years, $20 million on the restructure total, all in.
20 would be the absolute max.
Over 2 years.
Over
So you're fine paying him $10 million a year.
no, 5 per year. He's going to get what he's got this year.
So you're saying 3
Disregard
years,
this
20.
year. This year is set at
So
$11
each of the
million
next,
right now.
if he's on our team for 2 more years,
Let's talk 2025, 2026. Disregard 2024. 24, just assume he's getting
I'm
$11
okay
million.
with, call it an average of 5 over those 2 years. Whether they want to front load it or back load it, making that the
So
contract.
pay him as 11, then 5 and 5.
Yeah. And if you got a bonus out some of that to make the salary cap work, I think that gives you options. Is that something he wants? I don't know.
I'll be honest with you. I would be fine giving him 5 or 6 in 2025.
But
I don't want to do 2026.
yeah,
I don't want to.
And I don't know how they have to restructure it with the way it hits the cap next year. But if they could restructure it at 3 years, which would include this year,
yeah.
at $20 million, I could get behind that, and they could front load it and leave 10, 12 million of it this year to eat that out the gate, and then 4 and 4, something like that.
Yeah.
I could be behind that just because of the legacy and,
and
presumably he retires here.
And let's be honest, he does still bring value to
Yes.
what this offense is supposed to be.
But he won't most
at least
likely
for this year.
But
next
not at
year and the
11.
following year.
Not at 11 and 12 million.
Yeah, and that's what I'm not. Yeah, and I'm not agreeing that that's.
And look,
his
here's the deal. I
value
love
per year.
Kamara. He's one of my favorite Saints ever.
Yeah.
But this is not one of those.
You can't
The
pay
team
him.
should pay him because what he. No, I'm not about that.
That's why I'm okay with paying him something, but I'm sure if I were to hear from some back channel, here's the number that he went into the room with, I'm sure I'm not okay with the number his agent threw
Right.
out there to begin with.
And look, I'm all
You
for
know.
trying too. It's minicamp. Try, give it a try. But what's in Alvin's best interest is when he gets told no, because that's what's going to happen, almost guaranteed, unless he accepts something like a $3 million number next year, right? It's going to be something low like that for them to budge at all. If he just wants to hang around for another year and take the salary he's going to get on the open market, I don't have a problem with that. But if they cave at all, it is completely against everything they've done this offseason.
Yep.
He has zero leverage. Zero. Okay, the contract's up this year. So better than taking fines and not playing.
Yeah.
Give it a shot. If he's reasonable, they'll, I think, listen.
Yeah.
If he's asking for 7, 8 going forward, the answer's a hard no. And come in, don't lose money with your fines. Come in and play. Take this great year of 12, and then either you reconsider next year based off what happens this year, or someone maybe gives him 2 years, $10 million on the open market.
The only chips he has on his side are to say, and it's not even really like leverage, but it's really a big what if. Because it's you got Kubiak, and you know what kind of system he brings, you know what his plan is. So if you don't sign me, you're losing out on all these different things you thought that I could be in this offense, and then it's like, go have fun with Jamal and
Probably.
whoever
Well,
you think Kendra is going to be for
But he
17
has to
games.
sit out to make that point.
And here's the
And
reality.
that's what I'm saying. So that's
They
why
can't give him that money back like they used to be able to. They used to say, well, you know what, we're not going to
Well,
charge
wipe
him
the
fine.
fines. You can't. The
Now
fines
they
hit.
can't.
if
That's
he
what I'm
sits
saying.
every day
Yeah.
of camp, I saw an article totaled up to 1.05 million.
Why
So
would you give up $1 million?
when you're already bargaining over what in total might be at max 20?
Right.
A mil is,
He's not gonna sit
he's
out.
not going to sit out. It's not to his benefit to do it, and it's also, but even worse, call it a season long thing. If he wanted to take the Le'Veon Bell route, that would be a death sentence for him.
Right, because you'll never get what they're
It's
going to
not
pay
enough.
you.
So I don't think, saying all this, I think whenever a player holds out and whenever it's your consensus or what used to be the best player on your offense, and especially someone who is one of the only holdovers from the great Breeze era teams and offenses, it's going to be labeled as drama, and it's going to be labeled as a big deal, and it's not a small deal. But I just don't think that.
It's not. And
I think it gets resolved.
like you
It's
said,
just-
I don't blame him one bit. Try.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. Like, if they're going to give him the money, good for him. That's great. If I'm the Saints, it'd be a terrible idea to give him money.
Yeah.
And I think where I think his leverage is very weak is that this is a team willing to lose right now.
yeah.
By their actions, they're not going to
Well-
we can't live without him. If he wants to sit out the whole season, and okay, we're kind of rebuilding the team right now. We're not a contender,
They're kind of playing with what they have.
right?
To me, his leverage comes from the fact that Kendra Miller basically played one game last year.
Yeah.
And Jamal Williams was absolute garbage all year.
Correct.
That is his leverage.
Yeah, if I'm his agent, I'm pointing to I'm like, you feel good about that?
Exactly.
That backfield,
So
you're going to waste the
if
new offensive
Kendra
hire.
just-
And if I'm
would've-
the Saints, I say, well, Kendra had the best running back game of the season.
By far. Kendra looked the
That
best.
was the best game of the season by a running back. Now, AK had splash plays,
and it was
but
one game.
it was one game, right?
Yeah. That's his only little shred of leverage. But either way, like, I'll say this. If you're going to give him, I'd be fine signing him up for 2 more years. And when I say 2 more, I'm talking 2025, 2026. Guaranteeing him $3 million each year and then load it up with incentives. You know what I mean? Like, put it in there. It's 750 yards. You get another $1 million, 8 touchdowns. You just load it up with incentives to where if he just performs to what he's done in his prime, he'll make his money.
Because at this point in his career, you could even make those incentives like numbers that he's already hit 5 or 6 times.
That's what I'm saying. Say you get
like-
because he's only hit over like 800 yards once, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So put it in there. 750 yards gets you $1
You
million.
could do 60 receptions. Or,
Yeah, 60
you know,
receptions. Put 8 touchdowns, something like
I'm
that.
totally good like that. He can earn $1 million if he gets 800 rushing, $1 million if he gets 600 receiving, $1 million if
Yeah.
he's producing at that clip.
Yep.
Then fine, let him have a way to earn up to $7 million or whatever. That's
It's gonna
fine with me.
it's
'Cause
gonna
no
get
one,
resolved.
no one's expecting him to come in and do 1,500 yards rushing. No one. He's never going to
No.
do that. He's never gotten 1,000 yards rushing.
No, he's not that.
He's
type.
not that type.
Even in his prime, he's not that type of back.
Yeah.
It's my take overall is that it's gonna get resolved. It might go down to like the very last wire, and it's gonna be a lot of gripe, and then you're gonna have your guys calling in to hold the mayo, yelling into the mic, saying that AK is full of shit and he's full of himself, and they want him out of here and stuff like that. People are gonna get angry and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think this is reflective on AK as a guy. All of his teammates are supportive
It's
of him
just
and
money.
doing it. It just
I'm not worried about that.
it's
That's
what has to
business,
be
dude.
done.
It's
And I think
business.
he's beloved, so I don't
Yeah,
know that
it's-
the fans will turn on him as much as some have in the past, because
Yeah,
that's
not
what happens.
Not
usually.
all of the, but I think that, that's what I'm saying. Like, my projection is that it's going to take this course, but ultimately, it might even be the last preseason game before they ink it. But it's going to get done.
That's fine. He doesn't need to play the preseason anyway.
Yeah.
But they have made some moves where they seem to be freeing up a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm,
So it seems like something might be coming down the pipeline.
And look, we've said they've avoided this kick the can thing, which they have, and we're all in agreement that we're glad that they have shown a different approach to their offseason signing habits. If there's going to be one player that they revert to keep around, to make them happy, to make him happy, I think I'm okay with it if it's AK. If it's now,
Well, no, my point is they've already done this. They restructured Taysom recently.
yeah,
So this was to free up a little bit. I don't think they're trying not to touch AK.
they're trying not
at
to,
all.
right? Obviously,
To me,
there's
you can read
Well-
between the lines. You can see they want Kendra to play this year because they think he's going to take the job.
well, they want Kendra to play because he's got the most potential out of anybody in your running back room going long term. But to me, it's obvious the evidence that they don't want to touch AK's contract is there simply by looking at what he had to do at minicamp to get what he wants.
Yeah.
If they wanted to touch his
That's
contract,
smart, though. They
he
shouldn't
wouldn't
touch his
He
contract.
wouldn't be in a point where he had to walk out to get their attention to really have a earnest conversation about.
I'll be honest with you. If I'm Loomis, I let him play out this year with the contract exactly the way it is, and say, you know what, you're not coming back at $22 million in 2025. We'll go ahead and sit down and work out a new contract at that point.
Yeah, I mean
That's how I would treat it.
Yeah, it's not ideal from like a team unity and all that standpoint, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and so I get it from a Loomis standpoint for sure.
Look, it's a business, man. Jeff Duncan wrote the article like a week or two ago talking about how this is probably the last ride for the 2017 draft class because Ramczyk, you know, by all accounts, probably doesn't play this year. Probably, in my opinion, probably never plays again. Lattimore, his situation,
He's
Yeah,
gonna be fine. He's
there's-
gonna be fine.
Because let's be honest, it's one of those situations where
I think 2024, there's a good chance it's the last time you see all those guys.
yeah, I mean AK's a good dude and all that stuff. He's embraced New Orleans. He wants to be here, but if Loomis stays pat, doesn't cave at all, he plays on the contract he's on, then I don't see him as being the person to say after the season as an unrestricted free agent or having been released to be like, oh, you know, it's okay. I want to come back. No, he's going to go play for the Falcons or something. He's from Atlanta.
Not necessarily, because they might not pay him. Why would the Falcons sign him? They don't need to run him back.
He'll take a pay cut. At that point, he'll say, it didn't work out with the Saints. I'll play for
Your
somebody
Gurley
else.
dreams aren't happening again.
Well, I,
His
don't-
token year in Atlanta.
well, I didn't want Gurley to succeed in Atlanta. Let's be clear about that.
His best
But-
chance to make any money in his last couple years of his career is here.
Yeah, it's with us.
Yeah.
Look, I want him to play a couple more seasons just so he can make the Hall of Fame. But because I
Man,
think
Carmichael
in his
derailed that.
I just want to see what he can
Carmichael
do.
also made that, helped make that.
Well, the other-
His numbers over the last year haven't hurt his Hall of Fame case. His productivity have been down, but his numbers have been good enough to keep that going. I just think he needs 2 more years of it.
We need, 100 touchdowns, right?
100 would make a really strong case.
Are we worried about how many years he's
And what
been
are we-
all pro or
what are
not
we,
all pro?
29 away from it?
Is he that far? I think he's less.
I think
It's 29, so he's not getting that.
Yeah.
The
The only way this backfires on the Saints is if Kamara has an absolute like McCaffrey carbon copy season.
He won't.
all pro run. Well, whether or not he will or won't, this is the only way. But that's what I'm saying. The Saints have the position of leverage because the only way it backfires is if he has that all pro, which would be fantastic for us for next year. But then you're in a real pickle for.
He needs 22 max.
You
He's
know,
got 78.
Do we need 22? Okay.
Then you got a guy under contract who you owe $25 million to. He's clearly.
Yeah, but even if he hits all pro, what are you going to give a 30-year-old running back? You're not
Right.
going to guarantee him a lot of money. How many starting running backs are over the age of 30?
Yeah, I mean not many.
Well,
if
how many
any at
running
all.
backs produce over the age of 30? I guess it's at a high level.
Historically,
It's
like
Well,
nil.
even
None.
worse now than historically. You had a
Yeah.
few outliers
Yeah.
historically. Now it's, I mean, Derrick Henry's going to be 30 this year, so we'll see.
the only guys that
right?
have produced over 30 are guys who are severely underutilized through most of their career.
Raheem Mostert.
Which
Right.
Kamara's not.
Who is the-
Ricky Williams in Baltimore had a 1,000-yard
So-
season at like 33, 34. There's just not many.
it
it's
doesn't
going to
happen.
make renegotiating next year a lot harder. If Kamara wants to make it harder for the Saints to not pay him a lot, then he has to ball out. Plain and simple.
I think even if he balls out, you're not getting a big contract. You know what I mean? He's never going to see close to the $22 million that he's on the
I'm
on
not
the
saying
books
that,
for
but I
next-
mean,
No
you
one's
know.
paying him. No one's paying him.
Yeah,
Period.
like his days of getting a monster contract are done. Doesn't matter what he does.
I
Correct.
think if
I
he
agree with
balls
that.
out, it makes zero difference in his contract.
Agree.
Because
Agree.
he's 30, and that's just the stigma of the
Corey,
league.
he
right
could
now.
he could double his career high in rushing and go for 1,800 yards. He is and get 20 touchdowns. He is not getting a big contract from anybody. He's just not.
So he's a,
Yeah, I've never said he's getting a big contract, but he puts it's the difference between getting like a top 10 running back contract versus a bottom 5.
He's at 10,000 career total yards from scrimmage, 78 touchdowns total because he had one kick return, 500 receptions. The 500 receptions is already a Hall of Fame number for a running back, but the rushing yards aren't there with it because he's at 6,000. You know,
He's got to get to 22 touchdowns.
he's got to get that, and he's probably got to get to something like 7,000 and 5,000, which is that's 600 yards 2 years rushing and 400 receiving.
Keep in mind, there's also a break point on the near horizon where unless you just stop inducting running backs into the Hall of Fame, that rushing number is going to go down and down and down.
And the numbers I'm giving you aren't historic numbers; they're what I think the numbers are for this era,
adjusting the modern game.
I mean, just for context, Emmitt Smith has over 22,000 yards, and we're talking about 12,000. Barry has almost 20,000 yards. Jim Brown had in 10 seasons.
You're talking about like the top 3 running backs
all
ever
time,
inducted.
But let's look at Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin blows away, and that's a mid tier. But you can go to a Terrell Davis, but Terrell Davis won 2 Super Bowls and was MVP. So I think going by his peers right now, you're looking at obviously Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry are probably the 2 top. Yep. You know, unfortunately for Nick Chubb, if he didn't have the injuries, he might be up in that. But now we got to see what happens with him.
Yeah.
Zeke Elliott, his numbers are better.
Yeah,
Kamara's are better. Going to be better.
Yeah.
But Zeke had a crazy 5-year run, too. That is kind of like Kamara's 5-year run.
Zeke's not Hall of Fame level, though.
But their numbers are very close. Then you've got, who else would you consider? Saquon, we'll see. Now that he's with the Eagles, can he pile on 4 or 5 more seasons? Because he came in the league very young. He might have 4 seasons left where he could put up big numbers. There's just not many. But I think
touchdowns is the metric.
To me, it is.
You gotta
touchdowns
hit
and total yards. It's going to be way more looked at as total yards because of how much they're incorporating in the pass game now.
Yeah.
And look, Sean Alexander's still not in there.
He's the only
got
one.
100.
He's the only one, but very short career, and I think Kamara might have more career yards than him already. He's right at the 10,000 number. He just had a short career, which was unfortunate. His touchdowns, he had those monster years.
He has 106, I think, in his career.
He's
the only one over 100 that's not in the Hall.
Correct.
That you can say might not get there.
That has been eligible. That's not in. Right. There's guys with 100 who haven't quite gotten their chance yet. Anybody else? I mean, Christian will have 100. Derrick Henry will have 100.
I guess the point is, Kamara, he needs to get to that 100 touchdowns if he wants the Hall of Fame.
If he wants to guarantee it, right. I still think he has a case. Like Corey said, this is a different era, and his running back numbers are not impressive historically, but they are impressive for the last 15
Because especially if
years.
you look at the waiting period between whatever year it is that he retires and the year he's eligible, and then what will have happened to the running back statistics in that amount of time, they could the rushing could be deflated even more.
Look at Gurley. Gurley's not going to make it. Right?
No, he didn't produce well enough for long. Yeah, not nearly long enough.
But he was maybe a year or 2 away. I mean, so
he's got to get 100, dude. He's not getting it without 100.
I think he could. Look at Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook would have been one of those top 10 over his years in league. Kamara just blew by him in everything because his career's over already. So he's in the he's probably third but behind Henry and Christian of the era right now. You can't get another person who has better numbers. The question is, he didn't win. Derrick Henry hasn't won. Christian hasn't won. It gets interesting. I think with 2 years of just something like 1,000 total yards and gets to 90 touchdowns, probably does get him in.
I think it'll be a long wait if that gets him in.
He's not a first ballot, no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way he gets to that.
It just feels like it's like we're in our 60s. We're like, hey, he made it in. Look at that.
It's like Corey said, though. Like, unless you just stop putting running backs in,
right.
Like you have to move the scale right now.
Yeah, if the guys in Canton are like, "Oh, you got to have 1,800, whatever."
Yeah,
it's like,
I feel like no, he's right in that the yardage has to be adjusted. I don't think the touchdowns needs to be adjusted as much.
It does a little bit.
A little bit, but not
rushing,
as much.
Rushing
but not as
touchdowns.
much.
I mean,
nobody.
No, total touchdowns.
In the last 15 years, no running back has gotten to the 100 mark. None yet. Henry's not there. Christian's not there. Alvin's not there.
The running back position as a whole.
Yeah, but they will be because they're 7 years in. McCaffrey and Kamara. McCaffrey's going to hit it.
McCaffrey's going to hit it because of the situation.
Is probably,
he would not have hit it unless he got traded to that offense.
You're probably the guy to do this, but to take a look at if there's a way to summarize the total production for every offensive skill position historically, and which one has gone down.
Right.
The
Are we going to
most.
go
Oh,
back
it's running backs.
You know,
It's
so
running
it's running backs.
But are we
It's-
going to go kick out all the receivers from the 60s and 70s
Of course
and
not.
80s because of
Right.
these receivers' numbers that are going up and blowing away? And quarterbacks? Are we going to go kick out
See,
Joe
that's the
Namath?
flip side, though.
Yeah.
We're going to lose. Okay, so running backs, we're going to have less of them going in under the current setup, but you're going to have more wide receivers going in because the wide receiver numbers are going fucking bananas.
Yep.
So
and
that is the
look
flip-
at their contracts too. They're getting paid out the ass.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so prediction on Kamara. I think we all agree he's gonna play. Just we might yet to be seen on what for.
I personally hope that they just keep the contract the way it is and just deal with it after the season.
So you're zero cave.
I'm zero cave. I'm with your buddy Eric.
If it was he doesn't play at all next, let's just be stupid for him to do it. I'll give you that. If he said, "I'm not playing at all next year," if it stays the same, would you give him any amount of cave? Say fine, see you.
No, I'll tell you, kick rocks.
All right.
Yep, I'm the same way. Real quick to finish up on the touchdown talk. Derrick Henry 93, so he'll get there.
This year.
McCaffrey 81.
Ooh. Might get there this year.
He could.
Zeke 85.
Jesus.
Okay, and then AK. So, and then the next one down is Melvin Gordon at 70. He's not making it. All the way.
70?
Yeah, all the way down to Aaron Jones at 63. He's not making it.
Aaron Jones.
There's a world of...
AK's numbers blow his away career wise.
What does Cook have?
He's not even on the list. He has under 60. And then you have Joe Mixon at 62. He's not going to make it probably unless he kills it in Houston. Maybe he can. Another good offense, but so just my point. He's clearly of this era a top 5
So
guy.
Mixon and Aaron Jones could conceivably pass up Kamara. Kamara falls off and they keep going for a couple of years.
Could, but Aaron Jones same
No,
age.
I know they're older.
Same age. Mixon
Oh,
same age.
okay.
Both same age as Alvin. Same draft. Pretty crazy running back draft actually, because that had Christian in it too.
Mixon might pick up some steam, man. That Texans offense.
He looked a little lost a step last year though too, so we'll have to see what happens.
But
Never know.
Yep.
all right, well, cool. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up with that. And then, any more thoughts before we go?
No, I mean it'll see what happens with AK, and then I guess do we do another mini camp before training camp?
No, just
So
the
we're-
last one. Yeah, so
We're in the really dry stretch then.
yeah, so.
So we'll try and think of some creative
We've got to
stuff.
come up with some fun stuff.
Well, we
some
got one
signature-
waiting on us,
some
the
signature.
sequel to the Charcuterie Board episode.
That's right.
So we
and then
just-
hopefully some guests. You know,
Yeah.
can line those up.
No, we got them in the pipeline. We just need to get in here and do it.
We've taken a long enough break. We'll give you all listeners some more of what you're looking for there, right?
Absolutely. And with that, just remember, make sure your equipment is plugged in before you start recording.
Yeah. PSA.
Pro tip. All right. Thanks for listening to another episode of the 28-3 podcast. WHODAT?
Boom.
What a